So, in our last session, we talked about attention, being very focused, and we also talked about making sure we're being positive. This time, we really have to hit hard on safety. Safety is a very difficult subject to do in a short span, but we want to make sure you have the most necessary information to move forward. Because I know with a lot of leaders, they feel unprepared or don't know the processes and feel that they don't know what to do next or how to handle that situation. And then they feel that they're in trouble later over that situation. So, that being said, we're going to go over safety. First of all, it's very important that we do our best to be hands-off when it comes to any disciplinary action. We want to make sure we are hugging kids, that we are high-fiving them, giving them fist bumps, where, just giving them a pat on the back, whatever it is, especially the smaller children, our preschoolers, nurseries, they're going to need their backs rubbed. They might need their hair stroked a little bit. We understand all of that because that physical touch can calm them down and allow them to be okay. The issue that we're having is that when it's a disciplinary action, we have to be so careful to be as much handoff as possible. Unless we feel that child is in an attack mode, they're probably triggered in some way. We're going to talk about at least one safe way to restrain them. But the goal is definitely not to grab them, and move them over. Sometimes I have to take my hands like this on each shoulder and, just very carefully. But it's as much as possible, hands off. Thankfully, we do have cameras that will help show how much we're doing. But, I even had a parent ask this week, well, because one kid, their child shoved another child. Well, how hard did they shove them? Was it like this? I was like, I really don't know. I could not tell you. They were up on the top of the slide, and they just reported this kid kept pushing them down the slide. So there's no way for me to tell you how hard they shoved. We're going to have that same issue with a leader to a child, even on a camera. How hard did they push that child to get them out of the way? How rough did they push them? Those are things that could alarm a parent. It could trigger a child. And there's really no way for me to even answer that as a leader, even if we pulled up the cameras. Hey, was this person more forceful than they needed to be? That's very difficult. So we very much want to be hands off. And if you are, let's say, in like a hallway or something and you're alone, maybe that's the last child that's going through, they start a fight and the rest of the kids keep walking through. And let's say it's just you two and no one else is in the hallway. If they won't calm down just with your words, you're going to need to get an adult in there as quickly as possible, because anything that you do, you really want to have an actual physical witness. You want an adult, not a teenager, an adult who's at least over 16 years of age, if possible. So that's in those situations, you're just trying to calm them down. If you can with little ones, I'll try to just bring them over close to me so that I'm not talking loud. A big part of that safety part of calming them down is your voice. Your voice is going to be key to this. If you're like, what are you doing? Stop it. I sometimes have to be loud to get their attention. I tell kids that all the time. Hey, I had to yell for a second to get your attention. Like, hey. But then I try to bring my voice down as quickly as possible to a calm level. A little more deep, but very firm. This is important because if I continue to raise my voice, they're going to continue to raise their voice. And the intensity I bring, they're going to bring that intensity. I've struggled with this before, especially with some of our oldest kids it's not so hard for me with a younger child, but when I get to that more 11, 12-year-old, when I know they know better and they're kind of in your face, very aggressive, very disrespectful, that is a difficult situation. And that's also when you do want to try to bring in another adult, because if you need to step away for a second, say, hey, I just need you to stand here with them for a second. I just need a moment. That might make you feel like that's a weakness, but it's not, in the sense that we try to train our kids, right? Hey, are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you out of control? Go step away for a second. If we're trying to train our children to do that, then it's important that they see that we also can make that choice to step away, but we need to do it appropriately. Get another adult to stand with them for a moment. And maybe while you step away, that's a good time to just regather yourself and maybe get Pastor Joy or myself, and we can call the parents and start sorting that out and saying, hey, we really need you to come down here. We're really struggling with your child, just listening and being respectful in the situation. So find ways to stay calm. You don't want to lose it or even lose your ability to be, to even have that way with that child, to be able to have that connection, because you lost it. And so we want to make sure we come into that very calm and say, hey, I realize you're not listening to me right now, so I have to bring somebody else in. I'm going to get Pastor Joy or Pastor Bethany that keep that calmness that you can as best as possible, but be firm. If you're a parent, you probably already have your calm, firm voice figured out. If you're not, you have to practice it. I was practicing with some of our older teens, just working on, okay, you need to calm down right now. We need to take some deep breaths. Working on that voice, because if you talk quickly, right, hey, you need to calm down. You need to take a deep breath. That obviously is an opposite of what we're trying to get them to do. So you even breathing with them, say, hey, let's take some deep breaths. Those things are going to help them calm down. I often tell kids, and I learned this from a different counseling session one of my own children were in, that the counselor said, look at my face. Does my face look angry? And most of the time, sometimes I'm like, I don't know. It's like, but look at my face. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. You don't need to be angry right now either, I promise. This is a time we can calm down and think this through. I'm not angry. Are you angry? Are you angry with me? Try to help them understand that they might be at a 10 when really we could bring it down to a 3 or 4 and solve it at that level. Because the moment they're at a 10, they are no longer in their problem solving zone. They are now in their fight or flight or survival zone. And so they will say anything, do anything that they can think of to try to get out of that situation. They might lie, they might kick, they might scream, they might say all sorts of crazy things they'll regret later. If we can get them down to a problem solving zone and say, hey, I'm talking to you, and we'll talk more about this in a second, how to resolve a conflict between more than one child, that it's very important that we help them understand, I'm on your side. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I can't problem solve at all and make any kind of assessment of what's happening. Probably don't use the word assessment, but any kind of understanding of what's happening until we can talk this through and you can tell me really what happened. And so that's definitely being calm. That's extremely important as far as safety goes, and not grabbing kids. Try to be hands off. Now, if a child is triggered and they're starting to attack another child, or maybe even going at another leader, I haven't really seen much of that, but I have seen them, be triggered by another kid. Maybe that other kid pushed them, said something, and they're ready. They went into their fight zone. One of the best things, if you can, come up behind them as best as possible. Put your arms under their armpit and just hold firmly around from under their armpits, just like this, and just say, I need you to take some deep breaths. You're going to regret attacking. I need you to calm down so that we can figure this out. What happened? And they may not be ready to talk about it because they're most likely, So just try to very carefully, very slowly walk them back and get them maybe to where you have another leader and you can be alone for a minute, or at least in a more quiet spot if they're in an area that's more busy. So that's a great way to stay calm. Your voice has to stay calm. Initially, you might need, hey, calm down. But if you're saying, hey, calm down in a harsh voice, it's not going to help. But hey, stop is probably the best thing. And then say, hey, we're going to come over here to calm down. That's probably the best thing. So that's only if it's an attack situation, that it's not going to help. You might be able to get between the kids. That sometimes is helpful. It just depends on what's going on. And if you do, right, it's just, hey, you two need to stop. Let's go over here and let's go talk about this. And get another leader, step over where it might be more quiet, and try to understand. That brings us to the next part that can be very difficult, where you can definitely bring in Pastor Joy or I to do this. But then you kind of separate and talk to each of them individually, because the truth is generally always somewhere in the middle. And so you're just trying to figure out, normally like this kid, like, hey, this kid, blah, 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 blah. And then you talk to this kid, blah, 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 blah. Well, a lot of times you find out this kid pushed this kid, or this kid said this thing, or this kid misinterpreted this other kid's facial expression and thought they were being rude to them, and that caused the attack. And so then it comes into a learning situation. And we are going to talk big about this situation, and I want to finish what I was saying though. One child here, one child there. If you have two leaders, which is what I'd recommend, they each talk to them, then the leaders can kind of talk together and then say, hey, we found out that you said this and we found out that you said that. Now just wait to speak because we've listened to both of you. I want you to hear what I have to say, and then you're welcome to speak again in turn. But just say, hey, this, we understand that this happened, but we also understand this happened. It looks like both of you did something that wasn't okay. And let them have, if you'd like to speak, go and either you can have them raise their hand or just whatever it is, but as long as they're speaking in turn, and if they're like coming at a text, say, hey, you can't speak until you take a deep breath, and just make sure that they're calm, because we're trying to help them problem solve. This is a very important skill they're going to need in all situations. So make sure that you're taking that time to help them do that problem solving. If there's no time, which we hit that sometimes, try to free yourself with another leader if at all possible. But what you cannot do is take a child by yourself to an alone spot and work with them alone. That is, even with the camera, I would not recommend it, because you really want to have another leader there, especially if it came down to more of a fighting situation. You really do need Pastor Joy or myself to help with some of that, because we have some of the authority that can immediately say, okay, we're making the call, we're calling the parents, and then calmly explaining that. Once again, most of the time we need to be the ones that talk to the parents unless it is an emergency situation. So Pastor Joy or myself need to be that person. This is why. A lot of these kids that we're dealing with might be dealing with some ADHD, where there's some compulsive things going on. And so these are the parents most of the time that are getting all the bad reports all the time. And if as soon as they start walking into the children's building, Leader Susie starts saying, hey, Bobby, blah, 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 blah. And then they walk a little further in, and then Leader Stephen, blah, 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 about Bobby. Then they finally get it, and then the other leader, like, Bobby, blah, 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 blah. They're going to think that everybody's talking about their child, and their child is not welcome, and their child's being picked on. Even if their child was in a wrong, we're not working with that parent to solve that wrong. We're just bombarding them with a bunch of negative information about their child. And that is not actually helping the situation. So the best thing is to let one leader be the one, or maybe two together, explaining, but all at the same time. So it's not several people reporting to them from all different sides. It's just too much. It's overwhelming. And most of these parents are working really hard, and they can't control all of their child's compulsive behavior. And they're doing the best they can. And it's better for us to just report it to them, tell them what would be helpful, as a parent working with them in that situation, and tell them we want them in here. We just had a bad day. And really, we do the sandwich thing again in that situation. If for some reason Pastor Joy and I are not available and you need to speak to that parent, this is the model we would like you to do. Number one, hey, I need to speak to you really quick. Hey, we love having Bobby here so much, and try to think of something great to say about Bobby. We love that he does this and this. These are really great things. Today, Bobby struggled a little bit. This happened. You need to know, because we had told him we would speak to you. We already had him sit in a timeout, whatever it is, let them know kind of what you did to handle it already. And say, what we would love for you to do is just remind them that, hey, when we are doing worship time, that it's really time to focus on God. And when they're being disruptive during the whole worship time, then it's keeping others from worshiping as well. And even if they didn't want to worship that day, and that is their choice, that they can still choose to be quiet and at least respectful to those who want to worship. So if you can speak to them more about that this week, help us with that, because we really just want everyone to have a great service. And we really do love having Bobby here. We just need him to make a better choice in that area so it's not disrupting the class. So I did a start positive, talked about what wasn't working that day, talked about how we handled it, and then again telling him how much we do want him in there and we believe in what he can do for the church. So those are all things you want to make sure they're sandwiched, like really good. Hey, this is the part that wasn't so great, but also this is what we believe we're going to see in him. And please continue to bring him and work with us because we just want to work with you. We're just trying to make sure everybody moves forward in a good place. So really work on that. But in the most part, bring it to a leader, and definitely don't start talking to all the other leaders about all the things, because once again, then you're going to end up with that ripple effect even before the parent gets to the appropriate leader who has hopefully more of the information. And maybe knows that child longer, so they know more of what's been going on over time. That parent already feels like they've been attacked and that their child already is not wanted even before they get to the leader they need to speak to. So we don't want that to happen. If a child does need to go to the parent, and these come down to that safety situation, if the child has hit somebody, hurt somebody physically, that is normally an automatic. There are very few situations where I kind of had one even this week where I just mentioned to you, there were kids up at the slide. One kid was shoving the other kid, trying to shove him down the slide. The other kid now these are first graders. She slapped him, okay? It was a reaction. They both came down to talk to me about it, and I told them, hey, these are our options. And I said, normally I need to send you out because you've both been physical and harmful to each other. In the situation, though, you both did this. And I don't think you're going to do it the rest of this service. It's up to you. I can either call parents right now and you need to go to them with a bad report, or we can forgive each other right now, hug it out, tell each other sorry, and the rest of the service show me that you can keep your hands to yourself and you can show self-control. Then when I talk to your parents, I still have to tell them what happened, but I can give them a good report at the end that it started rough, but you turned it around and we had a good report. And they both agreed to that. They both hugged it out, and we didn't have physical issues with them the rest of the time. Because that was a very low-grade physical thing. It was just a reaction of just being rushed and then kind of self-preservation, I think, in a way. But for the most, if a child is just attacking another child, it's immediate, hey, and we are not generally walking a child out to their parent. How this needs to go is normally needs to be told to Pastor Joy or myself, and then we will contact the parent, or we will go get the parent, and we will have them come to their child so then they can, walk them back or whatever needs to be. This is more just to bring down the level of possible embarrassment to that child and parent. This isn't this whole thing about working with discipline. Discipline means to teach how to do right, how to do it right and correctly. And so discipline, the goal is not a shame. The goal is teaching. So if I'm teaching, hey, every time you hit somebody, all right, you need to go out and your parent's going to come get you and you're going to go sit with them. You're welcome back next week. But every time you hit, this is just how this is going to happen. It's just a teaching of the consequence. It is not a shame situation. So that is why we ask the parent to come, so we have time to speak with them and then tell them what we're doing and why we're doing it that way, and work as a team with the parent to hopefully help stop this bad behavior. And so that's the goal. We're teaching. We are not shaming. So be very careful always of how you treat those situations. Every kid will do better if they know that you believe in them and that you are there to help them. There are no bad kids. There are no problem kids. There are kids that are dealing with problems that sometimes are bigger than themselves and they need some help with it. Sometimes there are kids with bigger emotions than others, or just bigger feelings, or they have more compulsive behavior that's just natural at that time in their life to their body and their brain. That's a problem that they're dealing with. No child ever wants to be bad. They just are dealing with some things that are difficult. So keep that in mind when you're disciplining at all. That brings us to just normal situations. Let's say in a children's church situation, or even probably preschool, the goal is, one, let's say a child is just talking. They're just completely being disrespectful. You go over and say, hey, you need to stop talking. This is the time to be quiet and listen. If you continue talking, I will be moving you over by myself or just over by other children. So hopefully you will stop talking to this person. You might need to move both children. Make sure they both understand that is your first warning. I will be moving you next time. Okay, first warning. The second time, if they choose to continue that behavior, then of course you have to be consistent. You need to move them. If they refuse to move, which sometimes that happens, we have to say, okay, I have to call your parent to come get you if you refuse to move. Normally at that point, they will move. Just be very firm. Be calm though. Be firm and say, this is just the rules. We're just following the rules. You're not following the rules, so these are the rules we now need to follow. So then you're going to move them. If at that point they're doing great, then it's great. There's no need to even talk to the parent because the child changed their behavior, doing a wonderful job. Praise that child for making a good choice. And if you do talk to the parent, praise the parent for like, hey, he struggled, but then they made a great choice and we're so proud of them for turning it around. Make that a celebration moment. But if you have a child that continues, then it comes into the point of, okay, we're going to have to speak to your parents by the end. You really have to move them away from others, probably right by a leader, depending on the offense. Now, once again, if it was hitting and very physical, then most likely you need to get a hold of the parent and they need to come get them right away. But otherwise, it needs to be, hey, we're going to talk to your parents. We have to work this out because we can't have this every week. Then it brings you to the conversation pretty much I just told you about the parent. This is what was going on, la da 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 da. And but once again, talk to the child again, say, hey, we're a part of a team. We can't worship if one of us, even just one of us, decides to be disruptive and make it where we can't really focus on Jesus. That's hard to focus in when our brains are already busy. And then when you're talking the whole time or doing cartwheels or, with kids, it could be anything. It's keeping us from that moment. And I need you to use self-control. Ask the Holy Spirit to help you with self-control. Pray with that child. Bring them into problem solving this situation and the parent, because this is, once again, the goal is not shame. The goal is to problem solve and to help that child make a better choice and to help everybody be able to listen and learn in church.